In this video, we're diving into Section L, Contingencies, one of the most important sections of the RPA that defines a buyer's protection during the transaction. Section L outlines every key contingency period, including the buyer's loan, appraisal, inspections, review of disclosures, title report, insurance, HA documents, and more. Each of these contingencies gives the buyer specific time to investigate, review, and confirm that they're satisfied with all aspects of the property and their financing before moving forward to close. We'll break down each contingency line by line, explain the default timelines, how to shorten or extend them, and when it may or may not be safe to waive a contingency. You'll also learn how to properly use the contingency removal form, CAR Form CRB, to remove them and the risks involved in removing contingencies too early. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of how to manage timelines, protect your buyer, and keep your transaction fully compliant. Let's get started with Section L Contingencies. Section L Overview. Let's look at the big picture. 1. Section 3L lists every standard buyer contingency and the deadline to remove each. 2. It lets you shorten or extend any deadline or waive a contingency up front. 3. It tells you how to remove contingencies later by a CRB. Key timing phrase. Most lines default to 17 days after acceptance, and some lines say 17 days after acceptance. Or 5 days after delivery, whichever is later. That means the clock can extend if the seller delivers those documents late. Section 3L, 1 Loans. The purpose of loan contingency is time for buyer to secure loan approval subject to underwriting. The default is 17 days after acceptance. To waive loan contingency up front, check No Loan Contingency, very risky, only if fully underwritten. Best practice. Align this with appraisal and investigation so all three clear together. Section L, 2 The Appraisal. The purpose appraisal contingency is to protect a buyer if appraised value is below a set threshold. By default, appraisal contingency is set to 17 days after acceptance. There are 2 ways to set it. 1. Minimum percent of price. Industry norm equals 100% of price. Or 2. Minimum dollar amount. Fill the dollar line. To waive contingency up front, check No Appraisal Contingency. Also, removal of appraisal contingency does not eliminate separate FHA/VA rights in FEC. If offering an appraisal gap, write it in additional terms, example, buyer covers shortage up to X amount. Section L, 3 is Investigation of Property. This section is for inspections, due diligence, reviewing disclosures. The default is set to 17 days after acceptance. Informational access, a separate line buyer's right to access for info purposes, is not a contingency and continues even if contingencies are removed. Partial removal. Use CRB to remove investigation except for specified items, example, waiting on sewer scope. Section L, 4. For insurance, this section gives buyers time to confirm buyer can obtain acceptable homeowners or fire insurance and, if applicable, flood insurance. The default set to 17 days after acceptance. Remember, order quotes early. Wildfire zones and insurance moratoriums can derail funding. If insurance is uncertain, don't shorten this contingency. Section L, 5 Review of seller documents. This section gives buyer time to review TDS, SBQ, AVID, reports, receipts, permits, and anything the seller must provide. The default is set to 17 days after acceptance or 5 days after delivery, whichever is later. If seller delivers late, buyer still gets 5 full days. Remember to track delivery dates in your timeline sheet. Section L, 6 Preliminary Title Report. Section L6 gives buyers time to review title, easements, liens, CC and RS requirements. The default is set to 17 days after acceptance or 5 days after delivery, whichever is later. Watch for Solar/UCC filings, easements affecting use, private road agreements. Section L, 7 Common Interest Disclosures. HOA. The purpose of this section is for buyer to receive and review HOA docs, CC and RS, bylaws, budget, minutes, reserve study, rules, etc. The default is set to 17 days after acceptance or 5 days after delivery, whichever is later. Section L, 8. Review of leased or liened items. Section L8 gives buyer time to review of leased items. For examples, solar leases/PPAs, propane tank leases, alarm contracts, water softeners, heroes/PACE liens. The default is set to 17 days after acceptance or 5 days after delivery, whichever is later. Remember to obtain transfer terms, payoff amounts, and credit checks if required. Section L. 9. Sale of buyer's property. It is important to note, buyer's sale is not a contingency unless 1. You check the box here, and 2. Attach car form CUP. If Form COP is used, it controls timelines, buyer's marketing period, escrow period, seller's right to continue to market, 17-day notice, etc. How to remove or waive contingencies. You can waive at offer by checking No Loan Contingency / No Appraisal Contingency. Note on form, removal or waiver of contingencies at time of offer is against agent advice. After acceptance, remove via car form CRB, contingency removal. You can remove all or specific contingencies or remove with exceptions. If the seller wants confirmation, attach CRB attached and actually submit the signed CRB by the deadline.